Major Shetty, have you joined? Hello, good evening. Thanks a lot for sparing time for our students, sir.
No, the pleasure is mine. Thank you very much.
We will start in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
You'll go first, so the other speaker will be going after you.
Okay.
So she'll be joining also a little late, around 10 minutes late. So we'll start in another 2-3 minutes.
Okay.
Sudhanshu, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
So Anukriti is conducting it?
Yes, ma'am. Anukriti joined.
Good speaker.
Ma'am, shall we begin or shall we wait for a few minutes before for more participants?
I can see only 35 participants. What's the reason, Anukriti? I hope you've advertised it well.
Yeah, ma'am, we did share it among students. Actually, for our center, I think they have the memorial submissions going on, so they might be slightly busy with that.
It's totally their loss with the kind of resource person that you arranged for them. But I know it's being recorded. I talked to Ajay Sonavane, sir. Okay. So has the PIC joined?
Yes, ma'am, sir is here.
Professor Mahavir Singh, sir, are you there?
Yes, are you audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible. So,
Okay.
sir, with your permission, should we start the program? Oh, our moderator, Dr. Ashish, has also joined.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's start.
So, Anukriti, you start now.
Okay, ma'am. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to yet another mind-provoking discussion brought to you by Debate and Discussion Society of Law Center 2. I'm sure by now we all are well aware about the war waged by Russia over Ukraine. A full-fledged war in the 21st century has left us all with many questions popping in our minds. As law students, the first thing we ended up questioning was the idea of UN and the loopholes in international law. While war and show of power is not a thing of the past, something interesting about these two nations is the history they share and the power dynamics involved. While many today equate Putin with Hitler, there are others who claim that this is his rise to power and stride towards getting the old USSR glory back. To my understanding, before we critically analyze the current situation, it's important to understand the history of USSR, breaking away of Ukraine and other 14 small smaller countries from the great USSR, and they fall from grace of Russia. What's even more important to discuss is the impact of all of this on India, as we share a cordial diplomatic tie with both the nations. To answer these questions and many more like them, we have today's session being graced by two eminent speakers, Major Sunil Shetty, a decorated Indian Army veteran, and Ms. Jyoti Singh, an ex-legal consultant of Ministry of External Affairs. Before we begin, I would like to request our PIC, Professor Dr. Mahavir Singh, to welcome our speaker and share his word of wisdom. Sir, the space is yours.
Hello. Yes, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Uh, Distinguished guests, esteemed and respected colleagues, and my dear students, very good evening to all. I welcome all of you at our premier law school, Law Center 2, Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. Law Center 2 has been earned a good reputation in learning, preaching, teaching, and imparting of its good quality of education, legal education, to the students in India. Here, I want to quote that for the past 3 to 4 years, our students of LC2 topped the three law centers in Faculty of Law, University of Delhi, continuously. So it itself proves the hard work of my esteemed colleagues who teach the students by their passion, and our students who learn the legal education from their heart and soul. Law Center 2 has its glorious history of 50 years. Earlier, it was established in 1971 at ARSD College, Dholakua, New Delhi, and it was shifted in North Campus in 2018. Law Center 2 produced a good academicians, bureaucrats, judges, advocates, and we can boast that this center had been headed by had been headed by like eminent jurist Professor Upendra Bakshi, who had been remained a vice chancellor of Delhi University, Professor A.K. Cole, who had been remained vice chancellor of NLU Jodhpur and Ranchi, Professor Gurdeep Singh, vice chancellor RMNLU Lucknow, Professor B.T. Cole, chairperson of Judicial Academy, Delhi. And currently, all of you know that Professor Poonam Saxena, a renowned scholar, Vice Chancellor, NLU, Jodhpur. This year, as all of you know, that Law Center 2 is celebrating its golden jubilee, and today's event also a part of celebration of golden jubilee. Today, we have gathered to discuss a very sensitive issue, the Ukraine crisis. We have two very eminent resource persons to lead the discussion on this burning topic. Here we are having Major Sunil Sethi, Sina Medal, is a veteran journalist and entrepreneur. He has worked as conflict report in Afghanistan and was a military contractor for 12 years with the US military. He has lived and worked in various capacities in conflict areas, South Sudan, Haiti, and Iraq. He currently contributes on geopolitical to BizBuzz, and he's the founder of My Startup TV, an exclusive channel for startups. I welcome you, sir, at Los Angeles 2. Another distinguished scholar, speaker, we also have with us Miss Jyoti Singh. Miss Jyoti Singh graduated in law from University of Delhi in 2008. She subsequently went on to earn her LLM in 2011 and qualified UGC NET in the same year. She worked with the Legal and Treaties Division of the Ministry of External Affairs as a consultant till 2021. Before moving to the International Investment Treaties Framework Division of Ministry of Finance. She is also a visiting faculty in University of Delhi and Indian Society of International Law, apart from other law schools, where she takes classes on various topics of international law, including refugees and diplomatic immunity. Ms. Singh has worked extensively on various issues pertaining to various issues related to international law. She is also an active author and has written various writes up on international law. Here, I also welcome Ms. Jyoti and looking forward to today's discussion. Thank you, all of you, for joining us at Law 22. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for so warmly welcoming both our speakers. Now, to begin with today's discussion, we first have Major Sunil Shetty, followed by Ms. Jyoti, who will be sharing their views on the Ukrainian crisis and apprising us with the current political dynamics. The moderator for today's session is Professor Dr. Ashish, who is an assistant professor at Faculty of Law and has an expertise in international law. So without further ado, I would request Major Sunil Shetty to take the space.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Mahavir and Professor Dr. Vageshwari, and the team that's putting this together. Thank you for this opportunity. It's always a pleasure to interact with the next generation, which is going to be looking after India. As I always say this, it is in the hands of the new upcoming generation, and that is what my experience has been traveling in most living and working in conflict area. I lived in Afghanistan for 12 years, initial years as conflict reporter, and then, as a entrepreneur, similarly in South Sudan, Haiti. Now I spend quite a sizable time. I was spending sizable time before the pandemic struck in Iraq, Kurdistan. If you see, all these are conflict areas, right? In some way or other, there's some kind of conflict. And one question I always ask: why are these countries the way they are? Think of Afghanistan. What happened? It's only when the youth, when the generation that's supposed to take the mantle and do that is required to be done, if they don't do it, the country fails. And that is where, as an army officer and as a proud Indian citizen, I always feel India has always had. Go back into time and see, every time there have been people who have, the generation which needs to do what it's never supposed to do has done it. I think that's where I will connect it to Ukraine and say, I was in Ukraine as a military contractor for a while, and I used to travel. I traveled a few times there. Uh, One thing which is striking today, what's happening is, yes, somebody rightly asked on television this evening was, when one of the, I think, representative from Ukraine said, we are winning the war. And they said, well, the tanks are there just outside Kyiv, and you call it victory. But I think for me, when I look at conflict, what I think is, on one side there's a superpower, Russia, and other side is Ukraine, not a match. But then if they can stop, a, a, a force that is more far superior and hold it in its tracks, definitely the credit has to go to people fighting on the ground, and it would be across every across all the age groups, across all the democracies you can think of, male, female. Uh, that is what I fight for their motherland. I think that plays. Yes, destruction comes with it, but then what do you prefer? Would you prefer destruction by the enemy, or you fight for it? So I think those are my opening statement, and I'll let the other speakers get into it. But then the parallel I'm trying to draw here is, we as a nation are blessed that we have generation after generation which is ready to sacrifice and hold the country. And whereas in some countries, some nations, when they don't find the people who are ready to fight for it, die for it, the country, there is no future for the country. Ukraine, what I see today is at least they're putting up a fight, which is good.
Thank you, Major Sunil Sethi. You made the opening statement, and we are looking forward to your analysis, your examination of the issues involved in it from the military, and we hopeful that you would be providing us the military perspective, and since you have this background. Now, I would like to ask the second speaker having background in the international law, Ms. Jyoti Singh, to make her opening statements.
So good evening, everyone, and I'm very thankful to the Law Faculty, Law Center to provide this opportunity to me, which is one of its rare kind of opportunity, because I taught there, I was a student there, and now when I'm invited as a speaker, that's adding to the glory of, like being a speaker in Law Center too. So I'm very thankful to Mahavir sir and Vageshwari ma'am, and I hope that it's going to be a very enriching session. And as you all know that the topic is right now, it's very hot, and everyone who is dealing with international law, who has studied international law at any point of time, or as a journalist also, is very interested in the Ukraine crisis or the kind of international scenario which is there, which we all are witnessing. So as a journalist, if you see that Russia attacked Ukraine, but from international perspective, you will think that how can a sovereign country attack another sovereign country? Because that's very unlikely. You have to follow pacta sunt servanda. You have so many things that in good faith, you have to maintain your relationship with other countries, other states. So how can a country which is dominant in position can attack another country? And that's also a sovereign country. So it's very unlikely. But when we see from international law perspective, you have to go through, I was under this impression that the background will be delivered by one of the speakers, but it's okay, I can address the issue. So the whole war erupted as of now. The crisis goes back to 2014. So that was the time when Russia attacked integral part of Ukraine, that was Crimea. And that time also the allegations against Russia was use of force. And it was alleged that the force which was used by Russia against Crimea, annexation of Crimea from Ukraine was against the UN Charter and international law and the international legal order per se. So which was a starting point in 2014. But we can go back another to we can go back to 1997, which was the year when Russia and Ukraine signed a friendship treaty kind of thing. So it was an arrangement which governed the sea, the area where the Russian army or navy or the forces were given a liberty to be there. And Ukraine kind of delivered this thing that we will be maintaining the friendship and we will not disturb you there. But later, subsequently, the 1997 agreement was valid till 2017. But in 2010, what happened was that the president of Ukraine gave an extension and it was extended till 2042. So Russia was, of course, it expected the friendship treaty to be honored from Ukraine's side, which was not meant to be. And the NATO, when you see the geopolitical kind of thing, then you will understand that all the students would have heard and read about the geopolitical situation there, that Ukraine is very strategically placed. And NATO, that's North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is that the motive of NATO is to include the border states of Russia so that they have a kind of authority over that whole area, and Russia is secluded. So that was the idea of NATO, and almost all the bordering states of Ukraine have been already part of NATO. So only Ukraine was left. So now all the endeavor was to include Ukraine also in NATO. That was the threat which Russia perceived, and they started giving fillers to Ukraine that you can't do that, because once upon a time you were part of USSR, which was the conglomerate of the Russia and Ukraine and all the other Soviet states. So, but when in 1991 the USSR broke down, even now, if you see, the culture of Ukraine and Russia is very similar. So Russia is under the belief that Ukraine is being somewhat misled by misled by the NATO and West, because they have their vested interest in the natural resources, gas and oil, and of course the natural resources which are like it's very rich in natural resources. So Russia is under the presumption of that thing. So when 2014 war happened, same modus operandi was used by Russia. It conveyed the message that Crimea is the territory which is occupied by Ukraine, and there is a genocide there being done by Ukrainian government, and the Crimean government is requesting us to give us, to relieve us from the capture of Ukraine. That was the thing which Russia used against that point of time also, when it attacked Crimea, when it attacked Ukraine and annexed Crimea and made that an independent state. So you must be knowing, if you would have been following the chronology, you will see that Crimea was integral part of Ukraine. But in 2014 only, it was made a separate state after the attack of Russia. So that was the time when use of force, that this conflict of Article 2, subclause 4 of UN Charter and Article 51 of UN Charter, they came vis-a-vis, they were in conflict with each other. And again, the same story is being repeated now in 2022. So if Major Shetty wants to elaborate a little more on that, on the geopolitical side, then I can take a pause and I can come join back again. So whatever you say, Ashish.
Yes, I'd like you to throw more light on the right to self-defense as provided in Article 51 of the Charter, as well as the fact that Article 2, Clause 4 has been violated or not. On that perspective, I would like to have your say in after Mr. Sunil Sethi gives his opinion on the whole situation.
Right.
So over to Sir Sunil Sethi, sir.
Thank you for that, Ms. Jyoti. So see, when I see as a military man, what do I see? I know after this, Ms. Jyoti is going to be answering about this, right to respond back. But the way I see this is what Ukraine is doing at this point in time is what is expected out of them. Every self-respecting Ukrainian out there to defend their nation, right? That is one. But then what has happened right now. But I'm looking beyond as a geopolitical observer, I'm trying to see beyond, what are going to be the repercussions across the globe. That's my, rather that's the kind of view I'm looking into. That's the kind of world I'm kind of trying to explore into. Think of this: what Russia has done in Ukraine, can China do that for Taiwan, against Taiwan? What stops China from doing it? Would we expect any other or a different response from US when it comes to Taiwan? We don't know. I'm not saying that this is what would happen, but just think of it. Does it open up doors there? Think of also, people are already talking about. So people I talk to, some of the people I talk to in US, why US was soft on Russia, Putin for many years. One of the things they always say is they're worried about if they were to put a lot of pressure on Putin, they thought he would come more closer to China, and they wanted to avoid that. Well, I don't know how far it is true, but then what we see at this point in time is Russia and China are together. So whether they applied pressure or they did not, Putin is with Russia is closer to China, and they're working to and they're playing ball together. So think of what would be what would happen. Would this throw a new block onto the onto the top? Think of countries like Iran. Would they join some kind of alliance with Russia going forward, because they're also under tremendous pressure? Turkey. Think of Turkey. Turkey has been Turkey has been creating enough trouble. What happens to Turkey? Though it's a NATO member, not to forget, it is quite likely it could be part of a new bloc, which is with Russia. So North Korea. So if you kind of plot these: North Korea, China, Russia, Iran, and then Turkey, and then we have our friendly neighborhood Pakistan, which lands up, where the Prime Minister lands up in the middle of a war, lands up in Moscow and says it's an exciting time to be here. Going forward, the way I see is the geopolitics is going to change. The question mark on efficacy of United Nations itself is there. People are going to ask, is this what? I mean, people are already asking. There are a lot of memes out there. I wrote an article recently about the effectiveness of UN in all this. I mean, the very reason why UN was created, every time it has failed in delivering it. I think the only thing UN ends up doing these days is sending some peacekeeping forces who just are observers. Who stops these kind of attacks? Who stops them? If UN cannot, who will do it? So my thoughts are: what would happen, and how will what Russia did in Ukraine, how will that impact the geopolitics going forward? What will it encourage China to pull off something like this on Taiwan? Would anybody come to rescue? When I say anybody, I'm talking about the Americans who've been saying that they will stand by. They've been pro Taiwan. Would they do it, or would they take the same stand, which is we will send you the weapons, we'll send you, we'll give you intelligence, and you fight your own battle? I think these are the questions that's right now on top. I mean, this conflict has thrown more questions than answer anything.
So may I just interject? So yesterday, the Russian President Vladimir Putin had put his nuclear command on high alert. So this has kind of sent a shockwave across the European Union. And the European Union high-ranking officials have also made certain remarks, which the Putin, I mean, today it is reported that Putin considers these statements as very aggressive. So how do you, I mean, does this paint a very bleak future? I mean, a kind of nuclear war, or a short-range nuclear war might happen? What do you think?
I think if somebody had asked this question a week back, probably people would have said, "Oh, that's not possible," right? But today, today we know what Putin is capable of. He can do what he wants to do. But yes, definitely, one thing is for sure, that many people I was talking to, many of them actually in US, thought I'm talking about, people who are in some think tanks, people who are ex-veterans, who are veterans, many of them who lived in places like Ukraine, and also people who lived in Afghanistan. Most of them thought Putin would not launch a full-scale attack on Ukraine, but all of them are proved wrong.
Yes, that's the
Now, now the question is, I'm very sure this kind of checks, even if Putin does not have in his mind that he wants to use any of this, but it's already created that question mark. So there is no yes or no to answer to this. We don't know how he would react. So it's anybody's guess. My guess is as good as yours, or yours is mine. But then I think what it has done is it has forced the Western powers, it's forced the global leaders to sit up and think what needs to be done. That's why you already see in today news, most of the leaders calling and saying, yeah, we need to fix this. Let us stop this, because we don't know where this goes. What shape this war would take, or this conflict would take.
Okay. Would you like to add something more to that? I mean, Sethi sir, or you would like to come back after Jyoti Singh?
Yeah, I think Jyoti can take on it. I think she was looking to something, right?
Okay. So Jyoti would like, the very basic question in relation to this Russian aggression against Ukraine involves international law. And it is being said that international law has been absolutely violated, and there isn't any scope left for the UN to play its part. In particular, the way Article 2.4 has been violated, and Russia is trying to justify using Article 51. I mean, none exists. I mean, there's no justification exists under that. So we would like to, the students in particular have been raising such questions. So what is your take on that? And also we would like to have your elaboration on the security guarantee given by the three major states, Russia, Britain, and UK and USA. When Ukraine was liberated, was made independent country in 1991 following the disintegration. So there was this agreement which guaranteed the security. So that has also been violated by Russia. So we would like to have your view on all these aspects.
First of all, I would just like to add one point to Major Shetty's point, that nobody expected Russia to attack Ukraine. This is something which undermines the mentality or the wavelength of Russia, because if you'll see the chronology, in 2008 Russia attacked Georgia, and in 2014 Crimea was attacked as Ukraine was attacked as well, and a new state was born, that was Crimea. So the same modus operandi is being followed in 2022 also. So it was just kind of giving a threat. It was a warning to the Ukrainian government, and the presumption is that the Ukraine also was understanding the gravity. Still, they prefer to stick with their own policy, and of course, Russia's offer to have negotiations or talks was not welcomed by Ukraine, and that's how the attack happened. Now the thing is that you have to see the gravity of the attack. Like, you have to see the threshold of the attack. And first of all, again, I would like to add two things here, that you cannot call this aggression. Neither you can call this armed attack. Because if you have studied international law, you will understand that there is no definition of aggression under international law. Aggression has not been defined anywhere in international law. Same is the thing with armed attack. So to actually understand this as an armed attack or an aggression kind of thing is something which is something still controversial. So we cannot put this in straight bracket that it's aggression, or we cannot straight bracket that this attack as an armed attack. coming to the use of force, Article 2.4 of UN Charter, of course, you would all know that this is students of international law or teachers of international law would know that Article 2.4 has achieved the value of customary international law. So even if a state is not party to UN Charter or state is not following the UN Charter per se, they have to, in the respect or obligation of customary international law, you have to have that respect for use of refraining from use of force. So what it says exactly, it says that all the states, any state does not have any right to use force against any other state in respect of the state's territorial integrity or political independence. So that's what it says, Article 2.4. So it's kind of customary international law. So when it comes to UN Charter, we have two exceptions to this right to use of force. That's in two circumstances you can use actually force. So, but people get confused. It's like Article 51 only we all are aware of. I'm sure 50% of the audience who is there, who are listening to the talk, would be having this understanding that only Article 51 is the exception to use of force by the states. But that's not correct. If you go through the analysis of UN Charter, you will get to know about one another article. That's Article 42, and that's the article which along with 39, 40, 41, and 42 governs a kind of collective security. So that's from where is collective action by the part of state is arising from. Then we come to Article 51. That's right to self-defense. So what right to self-defense or what Article 51 says is that any state has the inherent right to protect itself from any kind of armed attack. So that kind of thing, that Article 51 delivers a kind of right to self-defense to the states. But then also, if you follow the cases of ICJ, if you have gone through the jurisprudence of ICJ cases, you will understand that the states have to show two kinds of threshold. One is necessity and one is proportionality. So you cannot on your own go and attack another state, thinking that, I have that the threat of attack and I can go and attack another state just like that. So the proportionality should be there and the necessity should also be there. So there should be an imminent threat or imminent danger. So Russia here, we have to think like that was there a real threat from Ukraine to Russia? Was the threat so imminent as was said in ICJ in that famous case of Nicaragua, that when the threshold of the attack or the use of force should be of that amount or that quantity that gives another state the right to self-defense. So was that the case here? That's something which should be pondered upon. Then coming back to your question of USSR, when the security assurance was given to Ukraine, actually I'm not very sure what kind of assurances were given by US, UK, because the situation right now is very clear. UK is kind of in a very neutral position. It doesn't take any stand. And when it comes to US, we all are seeing right now also what NATO is giving. Is NATO giving any support, or US or West or Germany? Are they giving any kind of visible support to Ukraine? In fact, the veto, United Nations Security Council, when the veto, I'm forgetting the word, when the UNSC introduced some kind of memorandum in the UNSC, and that was vetoed by Russia, and India and China both abstained. So you can understand the right now, what is the international relation with each other. That is what is being important. That is what is important right now. It's a situation when 1991, we never know what was the situation that time. And it's changing, it's evolving every year. So that's what my position is right now. So over to you.
So you sense that there is no justification at all. Putin has been trying to justify it under international law. So
I leave it open-ended because, I mean, if you'll ask me, I can't say that the threat was so imminent or grave that he had to resort to this kind of attack on Ukraine. But if you see that justification, legal justification which he has given, if you have followed that up, he has told that the two provinces, Luhansk and Donetsk, these are the two provinces, they kind of gave the message that there is being the genocide is happening there, and they requested Russia that you should attack Ukraine and you should relieve us the way you relieved Crimea that in 2014. But if you analyze the status of Luhansk and Donetsk, these two countries are only recognized by Russia as states.
I mean, autonomous parts.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So that's the thing. So I mean, if you see from a journalist perspective, I didn't see any kind of imminent threat or attack, which was it was so grave and imminent that Russia had no option but to attack Ukraine. And Luhansk and Donetsk also, I mean, it was just a kind of message delivered to Russia. Was the situation there? Is the genocide was actually happening there? Or they did not resort to United Security Council also. They did not go to UN. They could have usually what happens is that you should go to UN, and UN what they do is they Article 40 or 41, they use economic sanctions. They will disrupt your air services and rails and economy and other things. And then what happens finally is that when that is not going to affect the situation there, then the final resort in terms of war or other measures happens. So Russia didn't go to United Nations, and on their own they thought that Donetsk and Luhansk, both the states, they want to have, actually they're requesting us to intervene in their own domestic situation, and that's how the attack happened. So, and if you see Russia in that justification, legal justification also, Mr. Putin has quoted humanitarian intervention by the West in Libya, Syria, Iraq, and if I'm not wrong, Kuwait. So they are also, what message they are trying to deliver is that it's a kind of humanitarian intervention also. You cannot think that this is an arm attack to, I mean, take the territory or something like that. We don't have any ulterior motive. And what exactly is the motive is that it's a kind of thing to protect human rights of the people there. So genocide is happening there, and we as like powerful country, if you can take the example, like two countries are there, A and B, both are powerful, and C is not powerful, and C is requesting A, that is Russia, to come and rescue them. So that's the kind of excuse Russia is giving, that it's a humanitarian intervention. And the same thing has been used by West when they went to Libya and Syria and other places. So in the name of humanitarian intervention, Russia is trying to justify this.
Okay, fine. Sunil Sethi sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, so I mean, some students are asking questions like, what is way forward from here? I mean, given the fact Russia is a major power, is a member of the Permanent Security Council, and obviously international law is manifestly failing in coming to the rescue. So do you think these economic sanctions can work? And did economic sanctions in the past work against such major power? What is your
that's a good question, isn't it? Russia, given the size of the country, given its position in the in the geopolitics, with a neighbor like China, which is willing to work with them. Also, there are these reports where China would get probably 30% of the gas from Arctic. Russia would give them. Russia would buy equipment from China, almost 80% of the equipment that would go for exploring in the Arctic. So, given all that, and also, recently with the reports that Putin ensured that before he went into Ukraine, in some ways he was able to decouple Russian economy from sanctions. Now, think of it. there has been sanctions on Iran. How much has it actually affected Iran? Yes, the people are suffering in Iran, but is the regime suffering? Think of North Korea. So sanctions may impact the country common man, but that does it really have? Does it really lead to change of heart, or even in cases change of regime? I don't think there are any examples out there to say, okay, this is what it led to. So when you impose sanctions, think of again Afghanistan recently, right? The Taliban are doing what they want to do. It's the people who are suffering. So the point here is, will sanctions lead to the desirable effect? No, I don't think. Yes, the people would suffer, common man on the ground. Regimes change. We don't have any credible example to show that this is what sanctions led to. So, what is the way forward? I think the first thing first is, can this war stop wherever it is, and then bring. I think just before coming in, there was a first kind of round of talks between the two, within Ukraine and Russia. Can it lead to some, at least to start with a ceasefire, hold people, hold that, and then can we address in some ways the concerns of both the sides, right? Russia has, again, as Ms. Jyoti was talking about, was there a credible threat? Threat is not necessary all the time, cannot be equated with if there's an army standing at your door and you say, I'm under threat. Think of India. India has been always, India has this ongoing threat from Pakistan in all shapes and forms, be it cyber attacks, be it, social media. So the threat, how do you see it, right? It is all about that. Russia has its own point. I mean, Russia has its own case. I mean, when you look at this conflict, it is important. I mean, which side of the divide are you from? If you're from the Western side, the American narrative, then you will see Russians as the aggressors. They just go into an independent country, take over. But if you talk about if you see from a Russian standpoint, they say Ukraine was supposed to be a neutral zone. We would not accept, NATO presence in Ukraine, because that means, it is right. The NATO and the West is right at our doorstep. So,
Sir, can I just interject here? I mean, is it really a case that Russia can prohibit Ukraine entering into the NATO and Europe, becoming a part of the European Union? It's an independent country, secured, it's independent, secured under international system, United Nations based legal order. So therefore, I mean, this is quite bizarre. This argument comes from Russia.
It cannot. I don't think, I don't know if there are any rules by which, laws by which Russia can stop. If anybody, it is only the NATO countries that can stop Ukraine from being part of NATO. But then I think what Russians are trying to gain here is to get this, leverage, saying, okay, NATO will not give entry to Ukraine. I think that's what they want. They're not saying we will prevent it. What they want is guarantees, an agreement which says, okay, NATO will not be part of, Ukraine will not be part of NATO. So, not that Russia can stop if NATO tomorrow wants to actually give, which probably will not happen now. But then it cannot stop, but it just definitely wants to stop it from happening.
Okay.
Sorry, over to you, Dr. Ashish. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have, there are a few more questions, but I would like to throw these questions at you after Jyoti. Jyoti, I mean, today the General Assembly is going to convene a meeting, and General Assembly has been approached given the failure of the Security Council, because the Security Council is the principal organ tasked with securing international peace and security. So what do you think, what is the role of the General Assembly can it really be an effective mechanism under this Uniting for Peace resolution, which is being talked about today?
So, the most powerful organ of the UN, that's United Nations Security Council, has come with a negative result. The resolution has been vetoed. So whosoever is knowing the working of United Nations General Assembly and UNSC would very clearly can make a distinction that this UNGA will never ever be capable of doing anything against Russia. It's a very general kind of thing. What the work they do is that the logistics and other kind of things. So the task of maintaining peace and security is of United Nations Security Council. And we have P5 members there. And do you think that Russia will ever allow any resolution against its own country to be passed from UNSC? That's not going to happen. And it has already vetoed. So the resolution, this happened in 2014 also. And this happened in 2008 also when Georgia and Ukraine, they both were attacked. So if you will ask me personally, I don't think UNGA's whatever today they are going to do. Actually, I was very held up in a meeting, so I don't know what's the latest status that's happening. So if at all they are going to convene something, I don't see any relevance, or it's just the like time consuming thing when the real thing already has happened at UNSC.
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
Sunil sir,
I would like to
queries.
add one more thing here, that many people are talking about applicability of international humanitarian law in the current situation of Ukraine. So whether there is actually a war. So whenever the anyone carries a weapon or attacks someone, the IHL becomes applicable there. So even if like this is an armed attack or aggression or any kind of other use of force, but of course IHL will be applicable with regard to civilians and combatants when it comes to Ukraine and the current scenario.
And given also the fact that Zelensky, the president of Ukraine,
Yes,
has approached the ICJ, International Court of Justice.
correct.
So, but not under the UN Charter, because both these countries, both Russia and Ukraine, they don't recognize the compulsory jurisdiction, even though Ukraine recognizes the ad hoc jurisdiction, but Russia doesn't. So there's no scope of the UN Charter being involved. But this petition has come for provisional measures. Ukrainian president has approached the ICJ under some other conventions like Genocide Convention and terror financing convention, etc.
Yeah,
So,
primarily it is based on Genocide Convention only.
okay. So, I mean, will it make any difference? What's your take?
Again, if you will ask me, ICJ, we have all been seeing and following. They will come with provisional measures, and that won't be binding at all on Russia. And again, the provisional measures have to be implemented through UNSC. So when it will go to UNSC, again, Russia will use veto, and the result, we all know what will happen there. But still, as like students of international law, we will have too many things to research out of this judgment.
They don't do. They basically jump to the conclusion that international law is not at all effective. I mean, this law is to be thrown out.
But still, they'll give justification, so we all can use some research and we can ponder over that. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Sunil sir, could you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So one particular question directed at us is this: how India can make balance between emerging solid US-India relationship and Russia, the old friend of India, in order to avoid sanctions? And how do you see India's future in terms of geopolitical relationship involving USA on one hand and Russia on the other? What's India's future relationship with these two giant powers?
I think I'll answer the second part first. I think it is very difficult.
Okay.
India will have to do a real tight diplomatic work here. It will test India's diplomacy to the last bit. They have to really stretch themselves to come out of this, if I can call it, without a scratch. Because what you hear already, by India abstaining to vote twice. It has already, I believe there are some repercussions in Ukraine on students kind of moving. So India will be tested. India's diplomacy will be tested to as to how do they come out of this. Where do the India stand? You see, India is in a very tight spot. We have our own relationship. So, if you know this, India has always taken this, right from the non-aligned movement days, where India said we are not going to be this side or that side. We'll always follow our own independent, policy when it comes to diplomacy, global relationships, which is good, which is what it should be. But then, before we ask India as to which side India would go, just go and check out how did the other countries behave when China did what they did in Galwan. Did we see any reaction from the West? In fact, the reaction, they didn't condemn China. What did they do? They said, "Oh, you know what? You need to find peaceful solution. Parties need to come to the table." They didn't say, "China, you did wrong. You were the aggressor." Did they do that? So why do they expect India to go out and flag Russia? No, this is it's not going to work like that. This is international diplomacy. You have your rights, you have your interests, and India has interests on both sides. We have a historic relationship with China, with Russia. They stood by us in '71, and our defense supplies are even now, heavily anchored around Russian supplies, Russian equipment, and with America, it is with the US, it is a very recent. Okay, we have had good relationship, but in comparison, it is very recent. So and think of it. The question here is, how do you go with a partner who is found wanting in the critical time, right? Ukraine. So, case in point, right? Afghanistan, case in point. So the point is, India cannot take sides and should not take sides. We follow independent policy, and it will be. I mean, the diplomats, Indian diplomacy knows very well. They know how to do this. But I think what they're following right now is the right way forward as far as India is concerned, because we cannot. Or we should not take sides in this. We should be neutral. At the best we can do is, if we can use our influence, if we have any, on Putin and in Russia, to say, let's talk now. Let's come to a negotiation table where let's at least start talking to the Ukrainians.
Yeah, which job is being performed by Israeli president. Israeli Prime Minister offered his negotiation services. Nevertheless, one more question related to what you have just stated regarding the Quad, QUAD. So one, Advait Pratap Singh is asking, whether India is moving well towards joining Quad at the cost of Russia. I mean, the fact that Russia might get alienated from India. So what impact this might generate on India and Russia relationship in the long run?
Well, I think it was last month when I wrote this article on Quad. Given what's happening, what was happening then,
do share your link of your article.
Yeah. Yes, we'll do that. So, and in that article, this is the question I was asking. That if NATO cannot do what it's supposed to do we expect Quad to do what it's supposed to do? So, having said that, all these international associations, or groupings, they are for a purpose. We leave it there. We do not put all our security basket in those association or grouping. India should not, India will not and should not go away thinking, oh, now we are part of Quad, so somehow our national security is guaranteed. No, we are responsible for our own security, and we do what is supposed to be done. Yes, if there are certain groupings that are going to join in, if it's going to help us, if you see most of these groupings where they end up doing is military drills, which is good. As a military person, you learn, from the tactics of others. You meet them, talk to them, work together. You learn a lot. Beyond that, in today's world, I don't think it has got any relevance. That's what Ukraine crisis proves. So India joining Quad, I think Russia was never part of, Quad was more seen as something which is against China. But yes, if Russia and China come together, then there is a crisis, right? Then there is a problem. Time would say how this all pans out. But whether India should be part of it, yes, definitely it should be part of it because it is in our interest as well. And will it have an impact? We don't know. It will only time will tell us. But I think that's, as I said, these are tough times for Indian diplomats, diplomacy globally, but for India very particularly because we are not a P5 member, we cannot veto things, right? We do not have the say at international level, especially when it comes to UN, the way others have. So we'll have to do a tightrope walk and do what is in the best interest of our nation.
Okay. So, Jyoti, would you like to add something to what you were saying earlier? I mean, overall, how do you perceive international law bringing some sort of, creating conducive situation under which negotiations might happen between these two sides? I mean, what is the role of the international law overall? I mean, how do you, because this is also the testing time for the international law community as a whole. It is being challenged by the big powers. It is being said that the international law is used against only the third world countries, the poorer nations, other big African countries, but it is not applicable on the big powers. This is the major criticism, and this is being further substantiated by the Russian aggression against Ukraine.
I would like to just add one point, that international legal order has to be followed. So what exactly is international legal order? You have to go by the United Nations Charter, and you have to address your disputes or whatever is the agenda of the discord between two states has to be negotiated, and it has to be settled amicably. If you would have heard the statement of our permanent resident commissioner in New York, Permanent Mission of India, Mr. Tirumurthy. He also stated when India abstained from voting in that resolution. So the reason, I don't know, many people would not agree by the reason given by the Indian government at that platform. But somehow, if the talks have begun, that was the time when the war was going on. But now if the talks have already begun, so I think what he told is totally correct, that he quoted this thing that international legal order has to be followed, and at the talks between two nations is the the only way forward. It's war can never be solution to anything. So that's what I also think, that pacific settlement of any kind of war or dispute or discord is the way out. And of course Ukraine should also think about that, and Russia also. They both are now on the same platform, and we hope that talks result in some sort of relief for Russia and Ukraine both. And of course, to the whole, the world is watching the war with wide eyes. So let's hope that it ends soon.
Okay, fine. I understand that we had only 1 hour for this. Anukriti?
No, we can continue.
Okay.
And I think we can also request Dr. Santosh Upadhyay, who's another teacher, national, to add something to this discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Santosh, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here,
Santosh?
Dr. Yeah, Dr. Assis, am I audible?
Yes, you're very much audible. Sir, could you?
So with the kind permission of chair, yeah.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so with the kind permission of Chair, though, I'm following this debate from 6 p.m. onwards. And definitely it's a very wonderful debate. Sunil sir has reflected upon the geopolitical issue and Ms. Jyoti has on the issue. And some glimpse in the mind or image in the mind that the students after hearing this may lost all the interest in the international law. And so I would like to speak very few words as from sentences just to construct the international law and to put the real picture of the international and the law that is functioning in this whole diametrical opposite and very dissymmetrical society that is called international society, that is marred by power relationships, that is marred by many unequal relationship kind of things. So I would start from the famous statement of Clausewitz, a Prussian legal scholar, who said that war is merely the continuation of politics by other means. From the 18th or 19th century onwards, we find that the war is nothing but just a continuation of politics by other means. But subsequently, we have also observed the many kind of development. Maybe it's Clark-Briand Pact of 1928, a UN Charter, where Article 2.4 specifically prohibits the use of force against the political independence and territorial integrity. And again, there are two exceptions, 142, where is collective security on the order of Security Council. Member states may undertake forceful measures against any state. Another is 41, that is 51, that is individual and collective security. So this is the whole structure of use of force and the prohibition over the use of force. But with all this UN structure, we have witnessed many instances where member states or some movements, some bodies, NATO forces has intervened even without the Security Council resolutions. And Ms. Jyoti and Sri Sunil have rightly pointed out the cases, like be it the Kosovo, be it the Iraq, be it the Libya, where in Gulf War I, though there was Security Council resolution, but Iraq too, there was no Security Council resolution. NATO forces has intervened on them. Similarly, in respect of Kosovo, NATO forces has intervened without Security Council resolution on the ground of humanitarian intervention in respect of Kosovo, on the ground of weapons of mass destruction in the Gulf War II. And you all of know that weapons of mass destruction has never been found. So when you see that this is not the first instance where UN Charter has been violated, though, but definitely I think that the media propaganda that was there in respect of Kosovo, that was there in respect of Iraq, such amount of media propaganda was not there in respect of Russia intervention in the Ukraine. And this is the clear-cut point that we have some sort of fault lines. Like each and every law has some sort of fault lines. Even in our domestic courts, sometimes we say that judges refuse to define something and say that we would decide it by case-on-case basis. So similar kind of fault lines also exist in international law, and use of force is that fault lines that sometimes major powers or some powerful country exploit those fault lines. Now come to the aggression. I've also had sense that our speakers sometimes avoid to use it aggression or armed attack, but I clearly find this is aggression. There is outright aggression and outright war and armed attack against the what you say that Ukrainian people and Ukraine. There is no doubt about that. At least in respect of my understanding. Aggression, though it is defined in UN General Assembly Resolution of 1974, and particularly I will quote that resolution 3314 of 1974, UN General Assembly Resolution defines aggression. Now it's our own understanding that whether we are going to take UNGA resolution as authentic text or not, that is different matter because UNGA resolution is not primarily binding. But the same definition of aggression that is there in 1974 UNGA resolution 3314 has almost verbatim quoted in the Kampala Declaration in ICC statute in 2010, though it is for personal individual criminal liability, but the definition of aggression in respect of personal individual criminal liability as well as in respect of a state is already there. Though we confirm it or not, though we bind it or not, that is something different matter. This is all right aggression, but though it is Russia is checking the fault lines of international law. So law is already there. There is no doubt that law has been violated. Law has already also been violated. Now, what are the responses? So for any student of law, there is right, there is legal provision, there is violation, then what is the remedy? So I generally told to my students, and here also told, I would like to tell that if Security Council does not do this, it does not mean that international law does not do any kind of thing. Security Council has the primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. Security Council is not the something legal body that could determine something, that whether aggression has taken place or not. If it determines so, that is all right. But even if it does not determine something due to its geopolitical regions, due to its practical purposes, because why Security Council has been constituted? Why the veto power is there? Veto power is not for the purpose that, okay, you find up some final legal outcome on the particular situation. Veto power is there to maintain a power balance, to avoid the Third World War. This was the basic purpose of veto power. And so Russia has vetoed something, some resolution. It does not mean that we could deny that there is no aggression, there is no war, there is no armed attack. Now, then we come to the Security Council, General Assembly. Definitely in respect of Korean War, in 1950, there is Uniting for Peace resolution was there. And when Security Council would not take any step, definitely determination could come from the General Assembly. The General Assembly may adopt Uniting for Peace resolution sort of things, where it reflects the voice of the UN on any particular point. Because now the situation is that there is no voice of the United Nations as an organ. Security Council has completely blocked. So now we see that the UN General Assembly, where one state has one vote and something, how it's going to affect all these things. And again, the remedy like sanctions are there, wider condemnation is there, Russia's own reputation on its stake. This all thing is there in the law. So in law, it doesn't mean that you only find sanction that you go stop it or hang the person or you should attack countermeasures. There are various avenues, various mechanisms through which sanctions operates in very subtle manner, where sometimes we could not see, we could not observe, but in a subtle manner sanctions observed, because the nature of international society is that. So I just tried to put a whole Ukrainian crisis. I consider it aggression, I consider it armed attack, and I consider it an unlawful situation as per the international legal understanding. Now, what are the responses? The questions may be there that how could UN respond? And these responses, these questions of responses, not new to this debate. This question of responses has always also been questioned in Second Gulf War, has also been questioned in respect of future of Kosovo and other such measures. But the thing is that the media propaganda or something, that some jokes were going on, that when BBC and CNN says that is something right thing, when Russian television said it is not a good thing. So there's some propaganda war is there, but definitely beyond this propaganda war, the law is there. It is unlawful aggression of Russia. No country could use force against the political independence and territorial integrity. There wasn't one parallel situation also. Most of you must have understood in your mind about the situation of Bangladesh. India intervened in East Pakistan because Pakistan army was there, and the mass violation of human rights, bodily integrity of Bangla women, all these things are violated, and then India intervened. But India intervened not on the ground that I'm going to get the country independence. India intervened on the ground of self-defense, because most of the refugees that have come within the Indian territory. So India said that the Pakistani aggression of Pakistani human rights violation in Pakistan has created the situation in which India has to intervene. This kind of things is not available with the Putin. These kinds of logic are not available with the Putin. So Putin, though, has evolved something, he has given sanction, given intended independence to two provinces, Donetsk and Luhansk. But I don't think that the scale has too much rise, that Putin is justified to intervene on the ground of humanitarian intervention or any kind of thing. Yeah, this is a legal position. Apart from this, this geopolitical thing, definitely, I do not know that how the country could stop a country to become a NATO member. You could stop it, you could persuade it through other means, but if the country is determined to become a NATO member through armed attack or through armed force, if you want to persuade it, definitely it is an unlawful international law. So this is my final submission, though I do not have any practical experiences of the UN mechanism or something that what I very vaguely I understand I could call out from this situation. I have just put in front of my students and all the parents here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Santosh, sir, for sharing your views on it, especially the way international law is violated, stands violated following the aggression by Russia against Ukraine. And I also believe that this is high time the international community must come together and strengthen the international legal framework instead of talking about that international legal architecture has failed to deliver anything. And in this regard, I also firmly believe that the General Assembly needs to be fine-tuned and needs to be made more potent in responding to such situation threatening the international peace and security, threatening the international legal order. Because this is not a minor clash, border clash between two countries. It is a flagrant violation of international law. Article 2, Clause 4, that prohibits the use of force and prohibits violation of the territorial integrity and independence. That needs to be, that's the bare minimum precondition for ensuring that the members of the United Nations can feel secure and can feel independent. So that has been violated. So therefore, I firmly believe that this is high time. The international community must put together its will to make the international system more robust. Right now, it is ineffective, no denying the fact. But in this whole debate of international law not working properly, I have always maintained that look at these states who are trying to put sanctions on Russia. That is being done in the international legal framework. And the SWIFT mechanism, we can have different opinion about such international payment mechanisms, but that mechanism exists in the international law. So there are economic sanctions which operate under the international legal system. So we can't totally throw goes without saying that we don't throw the baby with the bathwater. So it's not like the international United Nations General Assembly or Security Council not working properly. Therefore, we should conclude that international law has failed. So that shouldn't be our conclusion. Rather, we should try and make this system work and to find fault with the existing system. Like our own parliament doesn't work sometimes. The bills are passed in just a matter of time, while there is a proper let down procedure for passage of the bill, and lawmaking is a very long drawn out process. So we don't say that let's do away with it. Rather, we try and stress and emphasize that the system has to work, it must work, the international community must come together. So these are the things which I wanted to share here. One more point is that the role of the good offices of the United Nations Secretary General, which is being missed here, which is Secretary General should offer his good offices for mediation, for negotiation. So Article 39, which talks about all this mechanism short of war. There are several mechanisms for dealing with this kind of crisis situation, and this have not been explored, neither by the offices of United Nations Secretary General, nor by any international leader or any. Currently, the geopolitics of today, I mean, international life is today missing the presence of any global statesman. We don't have any global statesman which could have come, which could have intervened constructively. So the Secretary General office is missing in its vital work of offering negotiation services or mediation services, as was the case during the Tashkent summit when the UN had offered its good offices. So this was the. Otherwise, Sunil sir and Jyoti has very effectively given their viewpoint on Jyoti has touched upon the international law framework and the way international law, the collective security system needs to be made more effective and she has touched upon the Russia and Ukraine relationship ever since Soviet Union was disintegrated, and following that, this treaty between Russia and Ukraine, and so many different aspects of international law she touched upon, and these were really, really very vital points she elucidated, she explained in a very precise manner, and I think that this is really, really very useful for all the audience, consisting largely of the students, so they will make more sense with it when they will also research on the points she has raised in her articulation today. And Sunil Sethi sir has given a very interesting talk on the geopolitics behind all this, and especially the ongoing the relationship between India and Russia, and India and United States, given the Quad matrix which is being formed, and how that Quad will impact on the relationship which India shares with these two very powerful powerful countries, the permanent members of the Security Council. So his ideas were mostly grounded in the geopolitics, and that is really, really required for us to explore, because international law and geopolitics, the international relations usually converge with each other, and how do they converge? So that we must make sense with, and he has really, really given a very prominent points regarding all that. He touched upon various aspects of the geopolitics. So really, this has been an enlightening session, and we are much enriched by the interjection of Dr. Santosh also, and this talk is very contemporary and very enlightening for all of us. Thank you. I hand over to
No, 1 minute. 1 minute, Dr. Ashish, please request our panelists for their concluding remarks.
Okay. Okay, so I thought that the concluding remarks were already made. No, but then like this is still an ongoing crisis, so we can't conclude anything. I mean, what is going to unfold in the next 1 week or even tomorrow, we don't know. So we would like Sunil Sethi sir first to give a precise concluding remarks, and which is to be followed by Jyoti.
Well, firstly, thank you all. Thank you for the opportunity. As an observer, geopolitics observer, my thoughts are, I'm kind of looking forward to how Russia Ukraine conflict is going to pan out in other parts of the world, especially Taiwan and China. And is there a new bloc that will emerge from this, as I said, which will include China, Russia, probably North Korea, Iran, and Turkey? And where does that leave India? Where does that leave India in terms of trying to balance between US and Russia? So those are the things I'm going to be looking forward to, and I'm going to be writing on these topics. I've also shared some of the links for your benefit of the article that I wrote. Feel free to see them. Thank you.
Okay, sir. We would be reading your article, and I also urge the students to read article written by Sunil Sethi sir. Over to Jyoti now.
Yeah, this was really a very interesting session and debate, which I was only following through. And then today I got the opportunity to speak also. All thanks to Vageshwari ma'am. And of course, this was enlightening for me also, because to speak on something, you dig out and you research. So that's how I got to know also a few very pertinent points, which I was not actually much aware of. And let's hope that the talks and the settlement is done very soon. But of course, we all have to follow the ICJ judgment, and whether it's going to, it's going to create another jurisprudence, or what is the status, what is the outcome. We should all follow that. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kriti.
Thank you. Before moving forward, I would like to thank our speakers for so elaborately discussing over the issue. Thank you for giving us various viewpoints and dimensions to view this whole situation and understand the current scenario better. Thank you, Professor Santosh, for also joining in and sharing your views. That your views are very enlightening. As student, there was a lot I could understand, and I've written points to go ahead and read on. And a big thank you to actually Ashish sir for so tactfully moderating the whole event. As we come to an end, I would request Professor Vageshwari to extend the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Anukriti. These are sad times, unfortunate for mankind to face one crisis after another. The pandemic is far from over, and the world finds itself in the midst of a war that has the potential of snowballing into nuclear catastrophe. War doesn't help anyone. It brings misery to those who fight, their family members, civilians, animals, birds, nature, everyone. It causes irreparable loss of lives, livelihoods, jobs, earnings, and mental well-being too. As is said, war doesn't determine who is right, only what is left after the hostilities end, and there is a long, regretful, painfully slow path to recovery, never normalcy. The Debates and Discussion Society of Law Center 2 endeavors to organize discussions on latest issues, and this discussion is no different. It is extremely pertinent for law students to keep abreast of all latest developments, especially those that have legal implications. Our respected professor in charge, Dr. Mahavir Singh, is always forthcoming and supportive of all our activities. Thank you, sir. We would not be able to organize all this without your encouragement. We are highly thankful to our esteemed panelists, Major Sunil Shetty and Jyoti Singh. When the student members of our society asked me to organize a discussion on the current happenings in Ukraine, I immediately called up Mr. Deepak Miglani, who is the Consul General of India, who had recently returned back to India after a glorious stint at St. Petersburg, Russia. And I asked him to suggest someone who could talk about this sensitive issue and its geopolitical, military, financial, as well as legal implications. He immediately put me in touch with Major Sunil. Major Sunil dons several hats. He is a decorated Indian Army veteran, a journalist, media personality, a successful entrepreneur, geopolitical analyst, and more. Major Sunil was extremely gracious to accept our invitation despite his very, very busy and packed schedule. Thanks a lot, sir, for your insightful remarks and patiently answering and addressing all the queries.
Thank you.
We have been enriched by your knowledgeable discussion, and your experiences have made up for a very nuanced exposition of this delicate issue. And also the questions that you have thrown to the audience, and also the writings, the write-ups that you have shared with the audience, all that has further provided them information and also further for thought. Thank you again, Major Sunil. Now, Jyoti Singh, with her long experience with the Ministry of External Affairs and vast knowledge of international law, was our preferred choice for this topic. Thanks a lot, Jyoti, for immediately acceding to our request and speaking with such clarity on these complex legal issues. Now, Jyoti has been a former colleague and she's also a dear friend. Thank you, Jyoti. Law Center 2 boasts of the best faculty, and we have just witnessed this in the sharp interjections by our two young international law experts, Dr. Ashish and Dr. Santosh. A big thank you to my colleague, Dr. Ashish, for moderating this session and steering the conversation with our esteemed panelists in a structured manner without missing out on any important aspect, and during the course of the same by also making valuable interjections. It was also interesting to see Dr. Santosh passionately defending international law. Now, thanks to Sudhanshu, the student convener of Debates and Discussion Society, and Anukriti for conducting the program. And last but not the least, thanks to Dr. Ajay Sonavane for handling all the technical aspects and the logistics. Thank you, everyone. Let us pray that this mindless war ends soon and peace prevails.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.